Owen Jones is at it again, or not again. I mean, he's always at it. I don't think he ever stopped. Yeah, the man whose first video on YouTube after October 7th was on October 9th, 2023, was titled um, Palestinian Lives Matter. Yeah, his immediate response to the massacre of Jews was to say, those who massacred Jews are the ones we need to protect. He finally went to, as he calls it, Palestine. He went to the West Bank, of course, not to Gaza just yet. But yeah, he went, he got the tour. He made a video, documentary style video of what goes on in the West Bank. You can see it on his YouTube channel if you want the short version of it is no Palestinian has ever done anything wrong, and the Jews only do wrong. That's my summary, but this is a panel show, so welcome to the reality show. I am joined by Marco, Richard, and Anders. Anders, your summary before we see and hear from Owen himself.
Yeah, well, if you drop into this video without any other context, I can see how people fall for this attempt of whitewashing Palestinians in general, and context dropping in terms of where we are in history, how did we get here, and especially as it pertains to 2000 or to October 7th. That being said, it's incredibly one-sided, of course, as we know from Owen Jones. He's only talking to Palestinians. I mean, it's not like he's stepping across the fence and talk to some of the Israeli settlers in the West Bank and trying to get a perspective from both sides. So um, it's a propaganda piece. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
Yeah, by the way, as we always say, comments help with the algorithm probably more than anything else. And as you can see, the anti-Semitic trolls are already in full force. They just see Owen Jones and they get inspired. So yeah, feel free to jump in and put them in their place. Marco, Richard, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Owen Jones is supposed to be a journalist, so he knows very well that the piece is just presented there under the guise of a documentary. It's actually, as Anders said, a propaganda piece. It's only a one side of the story. When you hear an Israeli talk, it's just because he's an IDF soldier on a checkpoint, which is being goaded in order to get a reaction from, and the you will notice that people interviewed are the usual suspects who appeared in endless number of documentaries and pieces about Palestinian and how badly the Palestinians are treated. And of course, every time there is a support piece of footage comes from either Al Jazeera, WOHO, and the BBC. I mean, come on. If you wanted to put a piece, a propaganda, even, you know, the Nazi couldn't have done any better than this.
And frankly, it's not clear when those other footage by other people of violent activity or whatever, completely disconnected, no context, no association. This is not something that Owen Jones has witnessed himself. This is footage from other occasions, other times, other contexts that have been intercut with him standing against a wall in various different parts of Israel, and therefore, and claiming that he's seen for himself. I think, I mean, does he go and ask all the controversial questions of each of the interviewees he meets? No, he doesn't, does he? Does he challenge anything? No, he doesn't. Does he question anything? No. In fact, he gives them each one he speaks to. He gives a nice prompt to ease them in to what he wants them to say, and of course, what they're happy. It is essentially written by them in the first place anyway. It's the least challenging piece of journalism I've ever seen, frankly. And it is sheer propaganda from beginning to end. And I don't really know why he went there, since he could have spoken to all these people on Zoom, and has done in the past in many cases. And certainly they've been all over Zoom anyway. So what was the point in getting on a flight, frankly, when I mean, even steps outside for about 2.5 minutes. But yeah, underwhelming to say the least. But of course, this is Owen Jones we're talking about.
Yeah, and Marco, I just have to correct you. It's not all the footage from the BBC and Al Jazeera. Some of it is from No Other Land, the so-called documentary, but also propaganda movie, which one of the directors, producers, one of the main people involved has been, I believe, arrested for, terrorism-related charges at some point. So, yeah,
Yeah, and Owen Jones just justifies using it by saying it's won an Oscar, so we
yeah.
must be we must be bolder and take that as a golden truth.
Well, even the Academy, I don't think will give an award to this documentary, so-called, by Owen Jones, but we are going to watch a little bit of it, unfortunately. This is a trigger warning, and Daniel, you can play the first clip.
Also, we support them. We are laborers to the Israeli market. So a lot of what they allow us to do falls back on supporting the Israeli economy, whether it's providing them with cheap labor or providing them with laborers themselves. So Israel knows what it's doing in terms of putting restrictions on the Palestinian market. It forces us to buy from Israel instead of buying from abroad, making it very difficult for us to import. And they make our economy not have enough job creation, so our workers are hoping to find jobs in Israel, supporting the Israeli economy. So for as far as Israel is concerned, they view us as an extension of their own economy, and they act accordingly. They definitely don't allow us to do anything that has any trappings of an independent Palestinian state.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
current
So anything resembling independent Palestinian state, anything that the Palestinians do that isn't that kind of isn't controlled to some extent by Israel tends to be terrorism. Like that's the thing. It's not that Israel woke up someday and decided, okay, we're gonna oppress these people because what are we gonna do with our time? It's that whenever the Palestinians manage to get through and murder someone, they will. And that is, again, that is never mentioned in this, and it's not mentioned here. And of course, Owen Jones, alongside his anti-Semitism and support for the extermination of the Jews, is also a Marxist. And again, I don't use that as an insult. I'm pretty sure he would call himself a Marxist. He supported Jeremy Corbyn. And so for him, hearing something like this is music to his ears. Anybody who hires me is actually my oppressor. This is very, very Marxist-like ideas that we hear from this guy. Anders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking when I was saying about how Israeli treats the West Bank or as a part of its economy. I mean, I think they should be grateful that they are as close as they are to the Israeli economy. Now, obviously, a lot of that exchange of labor and such has been shut down since October 7th. But if you ask the Indian and Bangladeshi immigrants in United Arab Emirates and things like that, I think they would be thrilled by being in the situation of the Palestinians in times of peace, being able to go into Israel and having Israel as a neighbor that is a reasonably westernized, I mean, that is a westernized, reasonably capitalist country with job growth, job generation. We know that Israel has a thriving innovation economy, and yes, most of the Palestinians are probably in supporting roles, in relatively low-paying jobs by Israeli standards, but nevertheless, being that close and being able to go into to Israel to work on a regular basis is I mean, that's a great advantage. And then what I wanted to say more was that there is no talk in this video about the Palestinian economic conditions, and I don't know what the situation is, but I wouldn't be surprised if you looked under the hood. Property rights are not very well respected, so you probably don't want to start a business or reluctant to starting a business. And I don't know what kind of regulations the Palestinian Authority has in place for someone who wants to start a business or things like that. Maybe it's great, but I would again not be surprised to learn that it's arduous to get something off the ground in the first place, if possible at all.
Yeah, the only time Palestinians want property rights acknowledged is when they claim that the Jews are stealing their land. Thank you, Bullmoose, for the super chat. Bullmoose says it was also clearly read off a prompter. I didn't notice that, but the thing is, um, he also very, very carefully chose who he talked to. And yeah, many of them, whether or not they're reading from a prompter, they don't need to, because they've this is what they do. They speak to Westerners who will listen and repeat whatever it is that they say. Marco.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the beauty of these kind of documentaries, because they're made by Owen Jones, which is not exactly very bright. He's evil, but not very, very bright. Because, for example, he's interviewing a guy who says, "Yeah, we've been held hostage here by Israel. Effectively, we can't have any life, any social life." And behind him, there are three or four people having a chat, sitting around the table. Later on, towards the end, when Owen Jones makes the point that, "Oh, this is apartheid, I've experienced it by coming here," he's actually standing next to a cosmetic shop, which has been clearly open since 1980. So that's a kind of restriction to life that the poor Palestinians are subjected to. And I mean, this guy is supposed to give, from the clip, is supposed to give an example of how badly Israel is treating them. Well, you know, we have difficulty in importing stuff. Yeah, because you would want to import stuff from Iran, and that stuff would be missiles to throw at Israel. Of course, you find difficult to indoctrinate your children and bring in weapons. And that's why Israel is imposing this kind of restrictions, because they know that if they leave you free to do free trade, you trade with Iran and people like that in order to buy weapons to attack Israel. And as Anders was saying, these people would thrive in times of peace. But why don't they have peace? Because they are the ones who keep attacking Israel. I would have loved Owen Jones to spend the day next to a checkpoint and see how long before a car driven by Palestinians would try to ram them, thinking they're all a bunch of Jews.
I think also, I mean, look at the economy that this guy he's interviewing is talking about, the Palestinian economy, the economy that chooses to spend all the money that it does get, whether it's from the taxpayers of Western countries or the charities of Western countries, chooses to spend it on digging tunnels, on infrastructure underground, on a network of terror, as opposed to, actually trying to build something productive and creative. And I think, of course, that's their real economy, isn't it? And the irony involved when he's talking about they're forced to buy from Israel. They're also forced to buy, we are told, forced to buy, but sometimes more volitional than force, to buy from Hamas itself. As well, when it comes to buying the aid that's given by those Western idiots, useful idiots across the world to supposed Palestine. So I mean, clearly that's part of it as well, isn't it? It's this deflection, this projection of what's really going on, which is the fact that it's Hamas and the Palestinians working together to ensure that that they are wrecking their own economy. Where the economy is doing badly, and of course there are plenty of examples of thriving markets, thriving food availability in certain areas, and has been far longer than really shown by any of the propagandists from the region. But of course, at the same time, their economy is the fault of their own actions, and that's as it should be.
Yeah, Marco, you mentioned in the final scene where he's talking to the camera, and yeah, there was a cosmetic shot behind him. There's also I noticed that final scene and the stuff around Owen just because hearing him is enough. I don't need to also look at him at the same time, so I kind of look at what else is on the screen. And based on, judging on past experience of doing shows about Owen Jones videos, we're probably not going to get that far. Not all the way to the end. So people, if you want to see that, you have to go watch the video yourselves. But yeah, nice cars, people walking around. It is, it's not that he found the one corner in the West Bank where he could do that, unobstructed. It's very much the opposite. He went out of his way to find places where Palestinianism was more of a threat to Israel. So, maybe conditions were a bit less comfortable. And of course, he was mostly talking to people, and those people can say whatever they want, and the worst parts of it will make the final cut. Thank you, Bull Moose, for the super chat. Bull Moose says, my point is that could have been some random person who was given a script as opposed to having expertise in what he's talking about. Yeah, the thing is, the people who sound like they have expertise, they have an expertise in propaganda, in anti-Israel propaganda, and there's a lot of that in the West Bank because it's one of those things that has unlimited funding. So yeah, we're gonna hear some more of that. I'm thinking pretty much everybody we're gonna hear from is gonna be an example of that. But yeah, let's hear some more.
Over 531 villages that have been depopulated in 1948. The indigenous people, the Palestinian people, our people, were forced by gunpoint or for fear for their lives. They were driven out to either other countries or just less than few miles away from here.
Zionist paramilitaries attacked Lifter, so they killed people.
I mean, the logic of it, the intention was not to kill people. In Zionist ideology, that you need to create a Jewish state. To create a Jewish state in a country that is already filled with population. At that time, almost 1 million Palestinians lived in it. You needed to drive them out. So that was the solution, whether it was using violence, massacres, or actually just by fear. Palestinians were driven out so that they can make space for the new refugees that were coming from Europe, fleeing Nazi Germany.
Yeah, okay. There was something I don't think it was in that clip that I wanted to talk about, but yeah, this is something when we did that live episode of the reality show here in London, we talked about some of what happened back then. Again, that was war that was declared on the Jewish state when the UN partition plan was announced. The Zionists were celebrating. They got less land than what they eventually had after that war, because the Arabs all came together and said, let's get rid of those Jews, and it was unsuccessful. So to say they had to flee at gunpoint is like to say the people who flooded Israel on October 7th, then had to flee at gunpoint, out of fear of Israel's retaliation or defense of its own people. Yeah, this was a war started by the Arabs, lost by the Arabs, and the first of many, many wars that the Arabs started and lost against Israel. That's what actually happened there. By the way, the person being interviewed, I'm sure, knows this. Owen Jones absolutely knows this. Owen Jones is not mistaken. He's not, it's not an error of knowledge on Owen Jones's part. He is very knowledgeable, and he is doing this with a clear goal. Anders.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to what you just said, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of the exodus of Palestinians in and around the 1948 war was encouraged by the Arab states saying, you better leave because we're going to come in and cleanse this area of Jews, and then you can return. And the ones who stayed, they became eventually citizens of the state of Israel, I think, and are living a fairly comfortable and thriving life right now. And the rest of them, well, we know that there are I don't know how many millions who are still living in camps in Jordan and have not been recognized by the Jordan authorities because the Jordans really don't want them there, I assume. Or they hope that at some point they will be able to take over and move back into what is today Israel.
Marco.
Yes, I mean, this fake interview to a guy, effectively, you go to this guy, which is probably a known propagandist for the Palestinians, and also notice how they all speak perfect English. It's like they've been groomed and taught to speak English so they can talk to the press in the West. But you go there and ask him, oh, please tell me, how are you a victim? And then he spins all the story about the Nakba, of course, seen from his point of view. Like the Israelis just came in and shot us, but we didn't want to kill them back. We just wanted to kill the idea. The Israeli were between the ideas and the Zionism. Oh God, it's incredible. And also notice throughout the documentary. By the way, I'm pleased that every time there is an Owen Jones documentary, I seem to be on the shift, so I have to see this crap all the time. But if you watch the documentary, Owen Jones never asked things like, what do you think of the footage that the Palestinians took on October the 7th? Are you happy with it? Are you happy that these are the people you claim to be part of? What about the fact that the hostages are still held nearly 2 years after October the 7th? What do you think about women's rights? What about LGBT rights? How do you feel about it? No, he doesn't ask these questions because he doesn't want to know those answers. He just wants the answers to the questions that he's going to prepare in order to, bolster his agenda. I mean, how obvious is what he's doing? He's treating everybody that supports him like an idiot. Well, mainly probably because they are.
And of course, no reference to hostages at any point, asking any of them about that at all. And frankly, there's another word which I'll get to in a minute, which is missing from I think from the entire thing. I don't remember it being mentioned once. I'll hold off what it is for a second. But of course, he does mention Nakba. He does gives us a re-education about what Nakba is. He does tell us about apartheid. He does tell us about genocide. He does talk about occupation and settler violence and all of the words he's got written on the back of his wrist to remind himself of these things and make sure that they're heard by not only us but by the interviewee so that they use them as well. The word that I don't think appears once in the entire, it's about a 38 minute piece, I think, doesn't appear once, is Islam. Not once. Muslim, I don't think that appears once at all. He's gone with a Christian group, which he mentions at the start, and they are the useful idiots who are frankly part of the propaganda cover that Owen Jones has for not talking about Islam at any point, not talking about what Islam's attitude to the kind of things Marco mentioned there, women and LGBT etc. rights. I think all of that is clear in each and every one of his interviews. And frankly, it's just a microphone opportunity for the same old voices who have been groomed on speaking, as Marco said, to the Western media to have another crack at it for a different audience, a younger audience that follows Owen Jones and chooses to praise him endlessly for being there and walking across one street.
By the way, on the point of the words he uses, the first note I wrote in my notes was that something like 20 seconds in, he uses the word occupied 3 times within less than 3 seconds. And I thought, okay, I'll make notes on that kind of stuff. And yeah, within the first minute, he uses genocide, I think apartheid, oppressed. He ticks all the boxes. There's a checklist, and he gets through it in less than a minute, and he does that in all his videos. Like he is a student of the master in the previous century, who made sure that people know if you repeat a lie often enough, people eventually believe it. Okay, there was a point specifically about removing people from their homes. And I don't know if we have it in one of the clips. So if we don't, then I will make that point separately. And but let's go to the next clip.
We're in Hebron, a Palestinian city, and it is, frankly, it's like a horror film. I'm just going to be honest, it's like a horror film. It's a Palestinian city which has been divided up. The residents here live in prisons, and there's a few hundred Israeli settlers protected by this force of Israeli soldiers, and it has devastated the lives of thousands of Palestinians. Businesses closed, entire streets shuttered, they can't walk on the streets, and crucially, they're living under military law. Really important point here, Israeli settlers live under civilian law of Israel. The Palestinian people here live under military rules. They are dragged before military courts, where the judges are Israeli army soldiers. These are rushed court trials, done in Hebrew. They're just kangaroo courts. Now,
yeah. Why are they in court? What are they going in front of the judge for? We never hear that. But interesting that they picked Hebron, and interesting that Louis Theroux also picked Hebron. Hebron is a special case. When people talk about the settlements, the illegal settlements, as they like to call them, and as Owen actually pointed out earlier in the video, and doesn't repeat here. Maybe I don't know where the wise men in The Hague exactly stand on the Hebron issue, but people often, when they talk about settlements, talk about places that were built after the 1967 war, where Israel won Judea, Samaria, and the Gaza Strip. Hebron, in Hebron, there has been a Jewish settlement for hundreds of years. That was there long before. Now, there was a sort of a time when, it wasn't possible for them to live there. But according to, I don't know if there's anybody, even, the experts in so-called international law, who would claim that the Jewish settlement in Hebron is illegal. But yeah, it does have some very religious people, and it's a great place to look at when you want to say, okay, here are these crazy Zionists. But yeah, it is a place that was there long before the state of Israel. Anders.
Yeah, so in this case, I think it's important to just point out here that, I mean, this is obviously a difficult situation and has been for a long time. And I can't but thinking that, as part of what is making this worse is the ambivalence towards executing this war that we're currently in properly, and also the ambivalence in the past, and Israel's internal conflicts and its attempts to compromise on things that they shouldn't have compromised on, and when you don't conduct this with moral clarity, which I think is lacking in many cases because of the conflicts within Israeli society, with obviously a lot of different opinions about how things should do. But if we look at it from an objectivist point of view, when you don't carry out this with moral clarity, you end up in these situations that are where there are legitimate question marks. I don't know about Hebron. I don't know the history, so I'll trust you on that one. But just in general, I mean, we know that there are areas that were occupied after 48 and after the Ad War, and so as a result of a war, there was land that was taken. And then there are places where I think that Palestinians have legitimate property rights. Now, we know that they're not allowed to sell it to Jews. That's one thing. But then there are, I think, and please chime in here, in certain settler situations where property rights have been violated. So in a situation where you would apply an objectivist moral clarity to it and try to sort out the situation, yes, there would probably be land that would have to be adjudicated and go through a court and determine what would be required. But all that being said, we're right now still, even 2 years after this war, we must not forget that how we got here most recently, and that is Hamas. And Hamas is still in power in Gaza. Hamas has not given up, and Hamas is still holding hostages. And a path to reconciliation could have to start tomorrow and could have started 2 years ago if Hamas had been, stepped down. So we're in a situation where ultimately the responsibility lies with the Palestinians. And whether you think that the Palestinian people are victims under Hamas, like many of my European friends do that I talked to while I was in Europe here a couple of weeks, or if you think that, as we know, a lot of them still support Hamas, which makes them not innocent victims in this. And I feel that I'm rambling a little bit here, but let's just leave it at that for now. That let's not forget that Hamas is still in charge. They're still responsible, and they started it.
All right, I disagree with most of that. First of all, when it comes to
Cool.
legitimate property rights, as long as Israel doesn't annex the West Bank and it's not a part of Israel, it is a foreign enemy territory, essentially. Enemy territory that Israel gave to that enemy, created that enemy. Israel created the Palestinian Authority out of the PLO, out of a terrorist organization, with the belief that that terrorist organization has changed its ways and will now make sure that terrorism doesn't happen. Since the result of that peace deal, so-called, was more terrorism, a lot more terrorism, essentially war by the Palestinians. No, what Israel needs to do is to fight back and look at the Palestinian people as the enemy. Now, specifically when it comes to homes of people, and this was in one of the clips, I think, where they said, they were forced to sell. First of all, it's not really a thing. They're not forced to sell. The war was not forced on them. They chose to be a part of it. If we're talking back 48, and you started a war, you lost it. That's it. That's the end of it. So anybody who left in 48 has no right to ever return to their homes, whether it's in what is now Israel or in the West Bank. Now, in terms of settlements, these settlements, I think this is something else that was mentioned somewhere in this documentary. Somebody said, they're kicking us out and building settlements. No settlements are built, or they're kicking us out of our homes and building settlements where we used to live. That's not a thing. Like, settlements are being built on land where there is nobody. Now, there are sometimes demolitions of homes of terrorists. That's a thing that Israel does. If, when there was a suicide bomber, they would go and, you can't punish him anymore. They would destroy his home. So, I think, they've Palestinianism, the non-violent, non-physically violent part of that is this kind of victimhood propaganda that we see in everybody that Owen interviews here. Now, another thing you said that I disagreed with, and then I'll go back to you for rebuttal, and then back to Marco and Richard, is that if Hamas stepped down, there would be a path to reconciliation. Now, you did mention that many Palestinians don't agree with that. I don't know of the Palestinians who actually want that and say it. And even the people who pretended in this documentary to do so, at least the ones I looked up, you can see that their history is a history of violence because all of Palestinianism has always been about violence, and we don't see the voices, we don't see the people standing up to the murderers who represent the Palestinians the way we saw, for example, in Nazi Germany, people risking their life to say this is not going to be done in my name.
Yeah, so my use of the word reconciliation, that was a poor word choice probably, but because what I had in mind was, so I've been an advocate for a long time of Israel actually occupying these territories and creating a larger Israeli state, and then and that includes both Gaza and the West Bank, and I would add southern Lebanon and southern Syria to that, and then rule those areas, and then gradually, as people start as the culture starts to change and people start changing their minds, and we're talking about the multi-generational project here, you start to expand the protection of their individual rights and property rights and things like that. And when I say that Israel has been compromising and has had a lack of moral clarity, that in my mind includes those agreements that they have made with the Palestinians over the years. That has prolonged this situation and in many ways made it worse, over the years. So hypothetically, if in 48 or in 67 or 73, Israel had said enough is enough. Now we're taking charge here, and we're going to apply the same rules to these areas as we do in Israel, and then we're going to create a country here. We would have been, I suspect we would have been in a very different situation today. I mean, it's obviously a hypothetical, but still.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think it could have been done in 48. I think they were just happy to get
Yeah,
it
exactly. Yeah.
But
So,
67 and 73, absolutely.
yeah. Mhm.
Marco.
Yeah, when I saw the piece of the clip, the beginning of it, it just made me laugh when he says, "Oh, this is the terrible place." Well, it's the same kind of land, a handful of miles away from Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv has got lots of skyscraper, modern society, all this kind of stuff, and that's crap. Not because the land is crap, but because the people who live on the land are crap. Everything that happens there is performed by the people who live on it. That's something that Owen Jones is very well aware of it. In fact, most of the houses he can gaze on are probably also paid by welfare that the Palestinian Authority give to Palestinians who kill Jews. That kind of bizarre policy still applies. It's still there. Despite the cretins in the West recognize the state of Palestine, this still happens. By recognizing the state of Palestine, you recognize Gaza, i.e., Hamas, and this kind of policies. So this not only speaks terribly for the Palestinian ideas, but also for the people who support them and appease them, and certainly for our so-called leaders who think that they can just get away from the domestic problem by, appeasing some terrorists on the other side of the continent. It's just absolutely ridiculous that Owen Jones ignores all that.
What seemed particularly ridiculous about the beginning of that clip was when he's talking about what a horror film it is, and then shows a load of Israeli flags. Because that's what really keeps him, wakes him up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, is the idea that lots of people are flying Israeli flags, because he'd rather see Palestinian flags draped over everything. I think, what's the point in him standing on this Hebron hillside, making a bunch of assertions which are which he doesn't back up with any evidence whatsoever. He just vomits out and then claims that they're true without evidence or example or reference to anything. And then why be there? You might as well be in front of a green screen or sitting in your kitchen once again. I don't really understand what his point is, frankly. And given that Hebron is a city with some considerable history, significant from a holy city site in Judaism for a lot, it's relevance from that point of view. And of course, for all Israelis, it's got relevance for the Hebron massacre in 1929 when the Arabs turned on the Jewish residents and killed 60 or 70 of them. In cold blood, including women and children. So, I mean, of course, you're not going to refer to that, despite his keenness to trot us through history once again. So, it's a very selective, very assertive-based account that is intended to present a narrative only, and that's all he's interested in doing.
When there was that right-wing demonstration in London a week ago, I was watching some. I don't remember where it was, but some news report on it, and one of the anchors was saying, yeah, they're maybe not an anchor, but somebody on the channel was saying they're against immigration, they're waving flags, and I'm like, why is the waving flag? How is that a negative thing? Yeah, people think that waving a flag is a bad thing, unless of course you're waving the modern day swastika, which of course means you're a good person fighting against oppression. Somebody here said to somebody else, relax, buddy. And now I'm not your buddy guy saying on repeat in my head. But yeah, you guys aren't South Park watchers, so you don't get it. So let's go to the next clip.
That is what Netanyahu wants. Netanyahu wants to displace everybody in Gaza to a very small concentration camp and then force people out of Gaza, displace them, conduct the worst kind of ethnic cleansing. In the process, he's trying to destroy every house, every building, every hospital, every clinic in Gaza, every school. He wants to make Gaza unlivable because his goal is ethnic cleansing and not allowing people back. But we will not let him do that. The Palestinians are determined to stay on their land. Now the steadfastness of the Palestinian people, whether you talk about Gaza or West Bank, is about us succeeding in preventing this disaster. Our victory is if we stay in our homeland, if we defeat the effort to create total displacement of Palestinians, like has happened to 70% of our people in 1948. It's to prevent the new Nakba, which could be the worst for all of us. What we talk about here is that Palestinians are facing a true existential threat. If we are out of our country, we will never be allowed back. And that's why.
So of course they use concentration camp on purpose. These are the people who want to finish the job that Hitler started, and they're talking about concentration camps in the context of Gaza. Remember, the reason people are living in tents in Gaza is because Israel insists on keeping them alive, even at the cost of both hundreds of Israeli soldiers' lives and the goal of winning the war, which is not achievable as long as you pretend that your enemy is Hamas and the Palestinian people are somehow a completely separate entity to Hamas, which is what Israel is insisting on doing. The Palestinians are being moved from place to place to protect them, and their propagandists are pretending that is somehow exactly like the Holocaust. That is what they are saying there. Anders.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you're saying, and back to the point, Hamas started it. Hamas has not given up, and there is the reason for all of this. It goes back to that. You cannot separate Hamas from the Palestinian people. If you go back to previous elections and the overwhelming majority with which they won, and we've seen different surveys since then and since the war started and up to this day, and it shows that there is a remarkable number of Gaza inhabitants who still support Hamas, which is unfathomable. But as long as that is the case, it's this you can criticize Israel for not prosecuting the war properly and efficiently enough, and for taking or for being too considerate and focused on freeing the remaining hostages. But in the end, this is a war because Israel was attacked.
Marco.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I get really rattled when I hear these kind of savages talking about human rights and right to exist, because frankly, it's not the Israeli constitution that talks about extermination of a genus, of a race. While Hamas and the Palestinian Authority are quite open about it. I mean, the Islamic Republic of Iran is famous for its chant, death to America and death to the West. The Houthis have got in the logo the destruction of the Jews, a curse on the Jews, and destruction of America, all this kind of stuff. So when you hear these people using human rights like they understand them, like they cherish them, it really, really annoys me because they do not understand human rights. They do not want human rights. They are specifically against human rights. Crying out loud, it's a culture that treats women as second-hand citizens, just as machines to produce more martyrs and soldiers to kill more Jews. So it's the same as when our beloved leaders talk about free speech and at the same time clamp down on it. We've seen it here happen in the West, especially here in Britain with Keir Starmer and his 3 layers of justice that only awards terrorism and murder and crime. We see now the fact that by recognizing the Palestinian state, including Hamas again and the Palestinian Authority, effectively here, when you fly a Palestinian flag, you effectively fly the flag of Hamas. By doing recognition and therefore putting everything in the same pot, you do exactly that. But we hear this guy complaining about Israel bombing schools and hospitals. Well, for starters, do not put weapons and terrorists in hospitals and schools if you don't want Israel to attack them. Because, first of all, it's a breach of a Geneva Convention that nobody ever talks about because we'll be in favor of Israel, and we don't like that. And second, if you really care about your population, do not put weapons and use your population as a shield in the first place. So, but they talk, they just talk. Everything they say is a lie.
And frankly, look at the overlay of those imagery that he so usefully edits in after the interview to ensure that we understand what's being said according to his agenda. That is, because you're seeing groups of people moving down south or north within Gaza, for example, when warned by the Israelis to get out the way because they're going to destroy some terrorist infrastructure and some terrorists, and have given a warning to the population to move. And of course, that's not reflected in the imagery, is it? It's as if they're being deliberately just herded for the sake of it from one point to another, and as if there is no terrorism, because that's what this is an excuse for. It's an excuse to whitewash away that terrorist activity of Hamas and the Palestinians who facilitate it. And of course, also it irritates the hell out of me to see that propaganda of Palestinians hugging their children when they're the same group of people who lynched the Bibas family and murdered them, and that is never referred to by the likes of Owen Jones, and that is never questioned or raised with the likes of Barghouti when they're being interviewed by any of these apologists such as Owen Jones, and that gets right under my skin.
Thank you, Bullmoose, for the super chat. Bullmoose says, a Gazan anti-Hamas militia, Abu Shabab, actually sent a Shana Tova greeting to Israel. Thoughts? Shana Tova is a happy Jewish New Year. I don't buy it. I think we did an episode when Netanyahu decided to arm, I think it was Abu Shabab and others in Gaza. It's like nobody ever learns the lesson that the enemy of my enemy is not necessarily my friend, and in the Middle East, it is almost certain that they're not. I think Israel will pay for that. Israel has no friends in Gaza. It needs no friends in Gaza. It needs to stop pretending that it does have friends in Gaza. my position on that. I want to read a little bit about this person that we saw, Mustafa Barghouti, because he sounded so peaceful that I wanted to see who he is. This is from the Wikipedia page about him, and the quote is from Palestinian Defiance in the New Left Review. So Barghouti has explained that PNI, that's his organization, Palestinian National Initiative, PNI's quote, origins lie in the uprising of September 2000, unquote. When the second intifada broke out, quote, we were in the streets arguing that this was the independence intifada, whereas Hamas called it the Al-Aqsa intifada. Okay, so just a reminder of the difference between the second intifada and the first intifada. The first intifada was bad, but it was mostly people throwing stones. It was what happens when you're much better armed than your enemy and actually have more control of the land, of the territory. The second intifada was after what, 6 years of the Palestinian Authority being in charge of the West Bank and Gaza. It was buses blowing up everywhere. Buses, civilian commuter buses blowing up, restaurants blowing up. It was mass murder of civilians. This is what these people are about. The people, including the people that Owen Jones is interviewing. These are the peaceful, so-called peaceful Palestinians. I don't know if we're going to get to Marwan Barghouti, but there's a short clip of him in there. And I don't know if the two are related, but yeah, when somebody is presented in a certain way by Owen Jones, it's safe to assume that it's a lie. But if you actually look into it and you see what kind of a lie, yeah, it's particularly despicable. Okay, let's go to the next clip.
احنا طبعا our family was here before the Israeli occupation and before any settlement existed. The Israeli pressures we face from the occupation, such as reminders, closures, and preventing the family from entering or leaving the house, make us feel like we are in a prison. Harassment from settlers on the right and on the left, assaults on the family and children, arrests of children. The entire family has faced situations where settlers even stripped completely in front of the young children, causing psychological issues for these young children who are present. They have confiscated all the land around the house, leaving only the area of the house that is currently here.
All right. Yeah. Again, make us feel like we're in a prison. First of all, in the West Bank, it's you can leave much easier even than Gaza before October 7th. Although Gaza before October 7th had thousands or tens of thousands of Gazans coming into Israel every single day to work, and of course that also makes them the victim somehow. But yeah, you feel like you're in a prison because you are a part of a war and you people are committing crimes. That doesn't mean that every single person there is doing that, but what we know is that no person there is actually fighting against it because they think it's wrong. And again, the good people there are people who are either leaving or planning to leave, and this person is representative of the of those who stay. Anders.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. I looked up this family, and back in 2022, there were a number of articles about them being surrounded by settlements, and apparently Owen Jones has dug that up and gone back and interviewed them again. And I think it was Marco asked, or Richard, why even bother going there when you do this shallow type of propagandistic journalism. I suspect Owen Jones, he probably has a kind of secret desire of appearing as a little bit of a war correspondent who is showing up on site, and that somehow is lending more credibility to it. And at the same time, he is chaperoned around by this Palestinian Christian organization, and I wouldn't be surprised if, number one, yeah, he knows what we know, and he deliberately doesn't want to cover those areas for both sides of this. But then when he's kind of guided around the West Bank here, it gives me the impression of being a group of journalists who are invited to North Korea or something, and are chaperoned around, and they're only allowed to look at certain things and unquestioningly basically accept what their hosts are telling them. So this to me a little bit falls in that same category, it seems.
Yeah, and the point about him wanting to seem like a war correspondent, I when you said it, I'm actually surprised that he didn't wear a helmet and all the vest and everything to show how dangerous it is there. Marco.
Well, he didn't do that because he didn't think of doing that. Unfortunately, Owen Jones, he's a big Nelly, really. He's no Indiana Jones. So he went on this organized tour in very safe areas where he knew there wasn't a chance of being even hurt. So he didn't think about putting up it's a dangerous situation kind of charade. But he is there and he presenting all this kind of stupid interviews interspersed with pictures of children playing. The implication of, oh, look at these poor Palestinians, they're just like us, the children play and laugh like our children. Why is Israel treating them so badly? Well, first of all, if you know anything about that kind of culture, words like hurt feeling, harassment, arresting children, and psychological damage do not feature. I mean, these people are not a bunch of pussies like most of the young generation nowadays, and like here in the West, where
Did we lost? Okay, it is them. Thanks, Daniel. Okay, so Marco and Richard will hopefully be back soon. And if they're not back yet, Daniel, do you want to play that clip with Marwan Barghouti?
What Israel's trying to do to the Palestinian people is psychological warfare. It's to break Palestinians as a people, that they'll give up, they'll think it's hopeless. We saw Ben Gvir speaking to Marwan Barghouti in detention, obviously suffered hideous mistreatment, saying, you will never win, we will erase you. And that was part of that psychological warfare. Is that going to work?
Very, very interesting to talk about psychological warfare and saying mean things to Barghouti. Barghouti is in prison. Again, something Owen Jones doesn't mention is the reason. Barghouti is in prison because he murdered civilians. That is what Marwan Barghouti is famous for, and that is why he's such a hero among the Palestinians, because the one thing culturally that makes you a hero in Palestinian society is killing Jews, and Marwan Barghouti has done so successfully. Anders.
Yeah, no, I really don't know what to add to that. It should be self-evident, but obviously it isn't to a lot of people. So yeah.
Yeah, and again, that clip is kind of in passing. You see a few seconds of it, but it says everything. It says everything that you actually show Marwan Barghouti without saying who he is. And of course, Owen Jones admires this guy and admires him without a doubt for his successful murder of Jews. But yeah, none of it is mentioned. Again, none of it. Go watch the whole 35 minutes if you can stomach it. No mention of anything Palestinians have ever done to contribute to the situation being what it is. And of course, Palestinians are the reason the situation is what it is. And Owen Jones is a supporter of them, which is why, when in doubt and when not in doubt and at any other time, lie. That is the policy of Owen Jones. That is the content on Owen Jones's YouTube channel from start to finish. It's lies with the goal of helping move the needle even more against Israel and against Jews, because he knows that part of the result of the type of propaganda that he engages in is attacks on Jews.
Hmm.
Parting thoughts, and where can people find you, Anders?
You can find me on Substack, andersingemarson.substack.com, and my book, Think Right or Wrong, Not Left or Right, is available on Amazon.
And people can also find you at the Irreplaceable Spark Conference in
Absolutely.
1 month and 2 days in October 25th, 26th, Orange County, California. Anders, alongside many other speakers, including Mark Pellegrino, Jonathan Honig, Alex Epstein, and Leonard Peikoff. Make sure you sign up. The link is in the chat. It is objectivism.co.uk if you can't see the chat. And hopefully we will see you there. Thank you, Anders. Thank you, Marco and Richard, who are, we lost them, but hopefully they're watching the end of the show. And I see them coming back now. So, guys, do you have any parting thoughts?
Well, I can add some parting thoughts to what I heard Anders say before we were rudely interrupted once more by our own internet connection. Anders was talking about this being a bit like a North Korea tour of the West Bank, and I think that there's some truth to that. There's also the fact that Owen Jones doesn't want to see beyond what his chaperones are showing him. He wants to just confirm the bias he's parroting by being safely chaperoned around and not be shown anything that challenges that and not question any of it. Otherwise, he would be asking those questions of the people he meets. He would be wanting to speak to Israelis, not just Palestinians, and he would be wanting to get the full picture of what's going on. But of course, he doesn't want that at all. The whole thing is designed for him to give the impression that everybody he talks to is a measured, softly spoken academic, and they're all children-loving families in the background.
I mean, you hear these people in this piece, and Owen Jones effectively explains himself. But these people do not trust them, do not listen to what they say. This is all propaganda. You can safely assume that every word you hear is a lie designed to make you feel like Israel is the bad guy in this event. But also, I would like to comment on the bit you read on Wikipedia. I mean, the quote from Barghouti was, "We were in the streets arguing." There was an argument during Intifada. You were murdering Jews. And this is the kind of whitewashing of the freedom of free speech that we see nowadays. There is a fine line between free speech and action and killing somebody. You know, Charlie Kirk has found out with his own life. But you cannot let this kind of statement get away with it. It's ridiculous that people argue that they were arguing during Intifada. That was pure acts of terrorism.
Yeah, thousands of Israelis died during the second Intifada, during the confrontations and the bus bombings, etc. So, but in terms of where you can find us, check out the Briefly Objective, the sister channel to this. The link is in the description below for short form material and the key principles involved in all this conflict. So please do check that out. Thank you.
And we are back tomorrow with the Daily Objective and the reality show. Thanks, Anders. Thanks, Marco. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.